Welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. According to Zillow, this guest today is involved in 57 transactions in the last 12 months. She's not only a top producer, but she just had a baby about 5 months ago. She is a director of events for the Women for Women of Jacksonville. She has just over a decade in real estate and a PR degree from UNF. Let's welcome the team lead for Heustis and Tajera with Keller Williams, Carrie Heustis, to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Carrie, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
I'm glad we finally got you on.
Yes.
You are you pop up on the social media occasionally. I go through your social media, but what I really want to, we'll eventually drill a little bit when we talk about marketing in general for you, but you have a lot of, you blend a lot of your family, a few business stuff in there, but a lot of family on your social media.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that I remember asking someone years ago when I first started, and it's been right at 10 years with residential. And I remember social media started to take off, and it was the question of, do you start your own professional Facebook page or Instagram or whatever that is? And I always just wanted to blend it because realistically, I'm Carrie, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and then I have an amazing real estate career, and I think it's all kind of meshed in one. So that's always been my rule is, show them 80% of really who you are and then sprinkle in the other stuff. And then our team, we have an amazing social media page, so really just try to share it from there.
Right. Well, I mean, in your residential clients, because I believe like kind attracts likes, and people were looking on there and go, oh, she's a young mom. She's, that's what I'm doing now. This, that kind of thing. And it resonates with them.
Sure.
And shows that you're a real person.
Right.
Versus just constant sold, listed, here I'm showing this house all, which is great. It's showing you're doing business. But have you found in 10 years, there's really when you really want long-term clients that are referring you, buying and selling, maybe in 10 years, maybe they are doing that a couple times, but they're staying with you is because you have bonds in other ways. You have similar likes and.
Well, I think in general, making sure that you're not treating something like a transaction is the best way to go. Real estate is not just pretty pictures and reels on Instagram or TikTok videos. It's connecting with your customers, but being a consultant for them. So having that trust. So yes, I think absolutely, them seeing pictures of my daughter or my new baby and, at the beach, they can connect with that, but they also absolutely want to be able to trust me and advise them. So I think just meshing that is the key versus just the same picture over and over and over again of just sold, under contract, because to me, all you're doing with that is just showing kind of dollar signs versus, hey, how can I help you, with your financial journey?
Which is essentially going to lead us into the NAR lawsuit questions, but we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there, though. As I like to kick off a little bit, just so everyone gets to know you a little bit, where are you from?
Jacksonville, Florida.
You are?
Yes.
Where'd you go to high school?
So I'm from the beach, born and raised in Jacksonville Beach, and then I moved to Mandarin for high school. So went to Mandarin High School, and then after I graduated, I actually went to Gainesville for a few years, came back and graduated from UNF, and then bounced around a few different states, and then landed back here.
Chasing jobs or a man dragging you around somewhere?
No. So I moved to Colorado for a year, and it was incredible.
Right.
I have a PR degree.
Just for experience, or
was because of a relationship.
Okay.
But I went there. I worked for a financial firm, and I loved it. I was doing huge events, and absolutely loved it. But I missed Florida. I missed the water. I missed my family. I knew that I wanted to set roots. So I came back. Actually moved to Winter Park, Florida, and started working in commercial real estate. And that's where, I did the leap from PR, doing huge events, working in the financial industry, to commercial, and I fell in love with commercial real estate. But I was on the operations side. I was the director of operations for a little boutique firm. And I knew that I had fallen in love with real estate, but I was really leaning towards the residential side and completely wet behind the ears, had no idea. I always tell people that I am one of those that I did get into real estate because I thought, wow, there's going to be flexible schedule, and it would be great to talk to people, and my first year in, I knew right away, wow, this is completely different than what I thought, but
Right.
wow, am I in love with this?
So, well, you go to the transition from doing truly PR to the commercial. Was it just a job opportunity at the time? And
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it was a job opportunity. They were looking for someone, and they loved my resume, even though it was PR and event planning for this large company. I had the operational side behind it, so they took a shot. I was with them for almost 2 years, and then I made the leap back to Jacksonville, and that's where I found my real estate home with Keller Williams in 2014.
What was you mentioned you liked the commercial side, what you were doing there. What was it that you enjoyed the most?
With commercial?
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure you have this conversation when you speak to different agents. Commercial and real estate are two different monsters. Real estate is completely emotional. Commercial is all numbers. And so it was exciting to see these massive deals put together from, like a land development side or, large buildings. We did a landlord rep. So we worked with landlords essentially like a listing. You had a listing, which was an entire shopping center. And then we had agents like buyer agents, but they're called tenant rep, and they would find tenants. And it was just exciting to say,
Right.
okay, we have 3 units available. Let's go look at these new
Tens of
businesses.
thousands of square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just pairing those new businesses, like Jeremiah's Italian Ice, that was one of our first clients back in 2014, and he had just started. So it was just really that I loved that part of it. But there was something that was just making me want to go towards residential. So when I moved back to Jacksonville, I interviewed every brokerage you could possibly think of and landed at Keller Williams.
Well, it's interesting. You, and one of the questions I always ask, if you've listened to any amount, is that initial brokerage choice, because I think it can break someone.
Yeah.
I mean, we know the amount of people that fall out in the first 24 months in real estate, and it could be their choice in brokerage, and understanding that when you were, what kind of I don't know if you had talked to others or just did enough questions of those brokerages, evolving yourself on what you should ask as you went from one to the other to find out finally something that clicked with Keller Williams.
Yeah,
Tell us about that experience.
I had I think it was like my top 3 questions, and I knew right off the bat. I had a friend and a mentor who had been in residential for about 10 years, and she said, you need to make sure you find the right place, because you don't want to just be the agent that just bounces around from brokerage to brokerage. And I've seen that so often. So for me, it was the culture, being able to walk into somewhere and have that welcoming committee, and the training and the financial part of it. So the cap and what the brokerage fees are. It's not rocket science. It was really just trying to figure out what gave me the warm and fuzzies, but also would make my my wallet feel great.
What I found here, well, we know Keller Williams in town is pretty stout with even with the different franchises. Some are larger than others, but I mean, if I went back and looked at the roster of everyone I've had on, the top producers, Keller Williams is definitely, I've probably had more Keller Williams people on than any others.
Yeah.
Do you think too many people are looking at the splits and so forth? Because Keller Williams is providing or trying to provide a lot of value. I know people have left Keller Williams and tried to go other places, but because I think they are looking at probably the 3rd or 4th thing they should be looking at, and that's the splits.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the value? I mean, over the years, looking at other people have come and gone out of there, knowing what because you've stayed there the whole time, the value that you've continued to see from Keller Williams.
I think that you nailed it when you said that people are looking at the percentages, which I understand. I think that that's a very kind of nearsighted way of looking at it, because if you're looking at, if you're just looking at a commission check, first off, that's commission breath, right? What does your brokerage provide for you? If you're not trained properly, and if you're just thrown into the wolves, okay, you hung your license, now go, which I know there are a lot of brokerages that are like that. They're flat fee or whatever that is. Or they say that they don't charge a percentage, but then it's actually wrapped up in. I think it's, you're having these people that take a week-long course, right, in real estate or an online course. The barrier of entry, unfortunately, isn't really that high. And I'm going to say that. And it's just because you get your license, and then if you don't go to the right brokerage, they literally just go, okay, here's a contract, go. And it's scary. And I think that's why a lot of people do end up coming back to Keller Williams or going to a different brokerage that, even though there is a larger maybe cap that's taken out, but there's lots of training and you have that relationship with your broker, it's worth it in the long run at the end of the day.
Well, because like I said, there's so many top agents too at Keller Williams. How have you found that synergy, if we'll use that word, just being around, as every personal development book we read, right, always says it's the 5 people you surround yourself with, to be able to walk in that office, or whether you're at the social events or different things that Keller's doing internally that you guys are at, to be around like, hey, these are all people that are striving like me. They're looking for the next deal. They're trying out different marketing things to move the needle. To be around people like that,
I think that, again, well, I always say when you walk into a brokerage and if there's a ton of agents there, that's not actually that great because they should be out on appointments. But what's great, one thing that's really great about
sometimes it's just the perception.
The perception. There's no ivory towers. There's, again, at the end of the day, it's being able to trust your broker, that they have your back, that you can go to them with any questions, that you have peers and colleagues that are like-minded, like you, and just feeling comfortable. And we work with a lot of agents. We're very listing heavy, and we see a lot of agents on the other side that I end up coaching through or having conversations with, or they've made a huge mistake on a contract that could cost their buyer $10,000.
Right.
And that's really scary. And so I think finding the right brokerage, making sure that you're trained properly, and then having that high proficiency in what you're doing is the way to go. So
when you jumped into the retail world, you did your due diligence, you choose Keller Williams. Tell us what it was like for you in those first 12 months. Did it come easy for you, based on your background or just mental mindset altogether? Because talking about some of these new agents, some of them really don't even know what to do the first day. Right. They're like, okay, real estate, they're hoping they walk into that brokerage, and that brokerage is going to hopefully hold them by the hands and get them going.
Sure.
What was your first 12 months like?
Well, for me, I knew right away that I wanted to find a team to be a part of. And so I did my research. I interviewed with different teams. And what that looks like is you can either be a single agent or on a team. And I wanted to be a part of a team because I wanted to have that extra layer of training, marketing, whatever that looks like. And so I joined a team, and the person's team that I joined, now we're partners, and it's been, I think, 8 years or 9 years. But 9 years. Yeah. The first 12 months I did really well. And it's because I was consistent, because of the training with Keller Williams, but also with the camaraderie with the team, and just going to the office every day, treating it like a real estate business. I always tell people, I have people reach out to me still every week. Hey, I'm thinking about getting my real estate license. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about why. And if you treat it like a business, if you wake up every single day and you don't just wait for something to happen to you, you can be very, very successful, but it takes a lot of hard work.
I mean, imagine you explained to them the way you committed yourself to come in the morning, because I think a lot of there's no doubt if we look at some of the, we want to call them failures, just people have dropped out. They didn't have that mindset like you had. Keller Williams said, okay, you're on this team. We meet every morning at 9:00 and we have a sales huddle or whatever. Or I know there's a lot of successful teams that literally lean on each other. At 9 to 11, they're making those sales calls.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to do. Get those sales calls out of the way first thing in the morning. Eat the frog, right? And then they go on. How much was that part of your success, to just buy in? I'm going to use the word blindly, but just to buy into it, drink the Kool-Aid a little bit.
I think, well, and just to be really honest, because now it has been, it'll be in July, it'll be 10 years with Keller Williams. I think that for me, my career absolutely started that way what it has evolved into looks completely different.
Right.
Because, again, started off as a smaller team and then became really large expansion team and then back down to a small team, and we're so happy about that. So our daily routine looks totally different than what it did 10 years ago. But starting off, I woke up every morning, I went to the office, I did my lead gen every single morning from 9 to 11. We had team huddles. It was the grind. We were making it was incredible because it trained me to build that foundation to get my real estate career started. But now it has evolved in a sense that, we have the machine that's rolling. So myself, my partner, and our agent, we all essentially work from home virtually a little bit, and pop into the office when we need to. But we're really just rocking and rolling all over town, and so it's really evolved in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously you're 10 years in.
Yeah.
I mean, 57 transactions last year. I'm sure you didn't go from 3 transactions the year before. You've had some success now in the repetition, but how important is for those new agents to get some of those reps
Structure,
and
absolutely.
hopefully get them early.
Yeah, you have to. And I think one of the things is when we were, like I said, we were an expansion team at one point. So we were in Jacksonville and then 3 other markets. I was interviewing 100 people a year. And one of the main red flags that I saw was that we call them brokerage hoppers. And they literally would just go from brokerage. And it's not that that's awful. It's just that they were looking for something. And so there's always a decision that you make, right? So you can go to the right or the left, and that first brokerage that you choose and the people that you surround yourself with is extremely important because it can set the tone for your entire career.
100%. So you saw those. You're interviewing these people to possibly bring them on your team. What I mean, I assume you addressed that. Why are you hopping every 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, always just ask the question of. It's like anything. I think any industry that you're in, if you see someone that's been at 10 different companies in a few years, what's the why behind that? So I would always just ask the question of why, and it was always typically leads. Everyone wants leads, and that's typically why people will dump to different brokerages, leads or commission splits. So I would just kind of handle it case by case.
I would guess that a lot of agents who possibly run into that, or like I said, just fall out of the business, follow what someone else, their girlfriend or whatever. Someone said, "Oh, you should go over there." Without, I think Caitlin Doherty said it the best from DJ and Lindsay when she was on. She thinks people do it because they think the brokerage is going to solve whatever challenges they are personally having, versus them understanding the challenges that they're having and matching it with a brokerage that's going to help them overcome that. They're jumping into a brokerage and saying and not really truly understanding thyself first before understanding and then what that brokerage is going to bring to them.
It's like a relationship.
Yeah.
It's like when you're dating someone. It's the people who keep hopping and bouncing. It's the same concept. You need to kind of work on yourself and figure out what's going on before you can really settle down, and that's what it is. So yeah.
This is just during the any of the last 10 years, have you worked with a coach or had a mentor and so on? Tell us what brought you to a point of, hey, I think I need to move to a coach.
I think it was during our expansion era, and with Keller Williams, expansion teams were kind of taking off, and I was at a point where, I had 10 agents who I essentially was leading and trying to help and coach them, and what's the best way. Like, you can't coach other people if you're not being coached, is what I always think. So you should always better yourself if it's a mentor or whatever that looks like. So, yeah, I had coaches for about 4 or 5 years, and I would take, a little bit from this coach, and then when I felt like I had hit a little bit of a ceiling, I would take a little bit of a breather and then, maybe find someone else. But I've always had mentors in my life and coaches, and I think it's great.
Because you're running your own business. You're trying to make your own sales, and then you're trying to lead these other people.
Right.
And it's really hard at the end of the day when you're doing all that to try to stay in front of them.
Right.
So, I mean, I assume that coach was also an aid to try to stay out in front of the team you're leading.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think with, we all are looking for a little bit of of guidance or soundboard, right? But when it comes to accountability and making sure you want to hit your goals, that's one of the things that Keller Williams is huge about, is hitting, what do your goals look like? What is your why? I was huge into, teaching 1-3-5 classes, which is like your one goal, your 3 priorities, and your 5 strategies. So I just think having anyone that you can bounce ideas off of and they can hold you accountable is always great.
What do you think are the challenges of some of these agents that, especially, maybe came in 2019, 2020? I mean, as fast as you could stick a sign in the yard.
Yeah.
I mean, people, buyers were not a problem to find on every street corner. The demand is still reasonably high, but now that we've got some other, curveballs in the mix. Interest rates, inventory, is minimal. What do you think their challenges with right now that you're seeing, around the I'm using the phrase around the office. I know you're not in the office,
say all of
but
Northeast Florida.
Some of these agents that maybe you're talking to on the phone, that it was so easy. Now they're having negotiation.
Yeah. I think post COVID, post COVID, I think it set really unrealistic expectations of what the market is. Like you said, you would put a sign in the yard and you would have 25 offers. I mean, that was happening too. We had so many agents that joined just that first year, and their sales were crazy and it looked amazing. It's very unrealistic expectations, and what it did is it didn't. The reason why I do think that I have been successful is I had to work really, really hard, and I had to fall a lot in those first few years, and I had to lose out on negotiations and things like that. It teaches you when you're just handed everything. It doesn't really sit the same. So I think that now what's happening is they have a little bit of false expectations. They have to have harder conversations with buyers and sellers. And, we always call ourselves consultants, right? We want to consult with you on what your real estate journey is, on what your real estate goals are. And a lot of agents that started in 2019, 2020, they didn't really have to have those consultations and those hard conversations. It was just, hey, let me show you a house. Let's get you under contract, whatever that looks like.
Right.
And I think if you are a true consultant, I think that you're going to last a lot longer. And I think that what's happening with, and I know you said you're going to talk about it, but what's happening with all of the NAR stuff.
I was going to lead right into that next question, because this is leading right into it.
There's 2 things. First off, you set yourself apart as a real estate consultant, right? Real estate agent. There are agents that, got their license and they show houses for maybe all the wrong reasons, and they have a credit card, so they buy leads, right? And I'm not knocking that completely, because we've been internet lead heavy before. But right now we have a rule that we like to follow, where we work with friends and institutions, and we work with friends because they trust us, they know our expertise, our experience. And then institutions, it's more of either running acquisitions for an institution or working with regional builders. With that, the regular agent who maybe they've only been in the industry for 6 months or 2 months or whatever it is, they think, well, I need leads. So they swipe their credit card, and then they now are that agent on the other line when Zillow calls, right? When Zillow is there and a buyer wants to see a house. What's happened over the past few years is that the consumer, gets a phone call from an agent that they think knows about the house. And what happens is they don't. They've bought that lead. So the proficiency and the expertise has kind of dwindled down, and the consumer, I think, has kind of caught on to that. And with all of this, with this NAR settlement, I think that the agents that are proficient in the real estate industry and that know what they're doing, I think they can reap the benefits. And I think it is going to weed out a lot of agents that maybe don't have the foundation that they need. If that makes sense.
Well, just 2 things to drill down. I don't know. We're going to find out eventually. I don't know, in months, years. Is the general public paying attention?
I think that they are, and I think that they are going to start reading the headlines even more. I've been on a few appointments just last week, and every single appointment they've asked me about it.
Interesting.
They are friends. They're friends, and they're my customers. And I think that sellers are paying attention, and I think that we want them to pay attention. I think the difference is that the headlines say one thing, and there is a little mixed information. Agents need to be armed and ready to be able to explain what all this means. If you don't understand what's happening and you can't explain it, that seller is not going to feel, it's not going to have the warm and fuzzies for you, and it's not going to trust you.
Yeah, if they're not a direct referral or friend, you could lose some credibility there. So, well, these were what kind of question were you asked? And then how are you addressing it?
Right.
And
so
if you can give us a real life scenario here.
One of the questions was, hey, we heard that the commission is now negotiable, right? And then I went into, well, in reality, the commission has always been negotiable. And on a listing agreement, it says, 3% or 2% or 2.5% to the listing agent and then the selling agent. And I just explained, like I always do, that this co-op is going to the buyer's agent for this reason. And I think the biggest part that a lot of people aren't understanding is that co-op, that's an incentive for that agent to bring that buyer. If you look at any other sales industry, if it's, medical device sales or if it's tech, there's always incentives. There's always incentive programs. And in those industries, it's not looked down upon. But for some reason in the real estate industry, it's looked down upon. But any product that has an incentive, like a co-op, is of course going to have more people knocking on the door or, picking up the phone and saying, I want to see that house. So I think that you just have to be able to articulate what it means, the why behind it.
You just made me think of all these affiliate links that we've got out there. They want everyone to have their affiliate links in Google or Amazon or whatever. So, because you're posting so much social media, have an affiliate link, they click on it, that person's getting a little commission. And obviously they've already based it into the sales price to pay somebody whatever that amount is. And I was listening to it. There was going in and because I've talked about it, gone on YouTube and watched, get everyone's opinion on it, type of angle. But this one reel that this guy did is the buyer's always been paying for it. It's in the purchase price. They already, that's just been the accepted understanding, at least from the real estate agents that, when they break it down and why, how it all works, they understood it, but how we passed that information or educated the consumer.
It's just setting expectations. Yeah. And again, I think this is another example of, we as an industry, we haven't really done a great job in policing what that looks like because of the saturation of agents in, we'll just say Northeast Florida, because it is oversaturated. The agents haven't really set the right expectations with those sellers. And I had a conversation last week and she completely understood because I've sold multiple houses for her. And she was like, right, well, you've always told me that. And I said, exactly. It's not that the commission isn't negotiable and that, that the buyer's agent shouldn't get the commission. Is that it's always been a part of the listing commission and it's paid by the brokerage. So I think it's just setting the right expectations.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, and I think you would agree. I mean, the 6% has been out there because that's what the market will bear.
Right.
If the market wouldn't bear, and if you talk to agents around the country, I'm sure some of them might be at 5, some of them might be at 7 or 8, depending on what price point they're selling, and that it may. I think. Do you think that because of the HGTVs, the Bravos, and that sort of thing, and then there's some agents they're posting on social media, maybe their lifestyle, and people look and go, oh wow, they may they're looking at, they're only seeing the end result. They're not seeing that iceberg that's under the water part, and what you're actually doing.
I think that's a point that you just brought up is I think one of the biggest issues is a guy posts a picture of himself sitting on a Ferrari, right? He may not even own the Ferrari, but he thinks that that's going to get him likes and customers. One, that's all that does is show the customer that really all you care about is money. And I do think that in the last, especially 10 years, especially 5, the social media has taken a new game in terms of what the real estate agent looks like. And again, reels and pointing to boxes and things like that and doing dances. It's not really showing the consumer that they can trust you with maybe the largest sale of their life or purchase of their life. So I think, I think that this settlement is going to cause a lot of chaos. But I think with chaos, there's three parts to it. There's, okay, this is happening. Okay, now we're in it. What are we going to do? And then coming to terms with it. And I think right now we are in okay, we know this is happening. We're trying to figure it out. And then chaos is going to happen. But with that chaos, chaos is a ladder. Okay. But with that chaos, we are going to find out that a lot of agents are going to leave the industry. And it's going to be great for the agents that are proficient and that stay around, and they will be able to reap the benefits.
Right. I think, if you agree or disagree, you think we should leverage social media. We like to show some of the glamour stuff, but I mean, I'm sure you have stories where you've gone in the listings and you've had to help move furniture. Yeah. You've had to help clean up.
There's a lot of
do some nasty things,
glamorous parts to real estate.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do think it's all the HGTV, and social media in general is just a highlight reel of someone's life, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, a lot of people think that agents might be overpaid. And I'm going to say this, and it may not make a lot of agents happy, but some agents are extremely overpaid if they, showed one house and they didn't really consult that person at all. It's about consulting them and advising them and talking about what their actual financial goals are. But, I think I think this is going to weed out a lot of agents that it's not that that they should have never been in the industry, but maybe it's just not the right time for them, or it's going to shift the industry completely.
Well, with the number of agents that I've had on, and when just listening to you talking about having the conversation, and I can list off, if I sat here and looked at everyone's face and ran through the list, I think if Carrie Carpenter was as number one, just really because we kind of went in depth with it in creating that relationship from day one. Or Sophie Gordon, that's like her marketing, her mindset is like creating these because that's the only way you're going to stay in it long term. Or if you want to have fast success, because both of those ladies within a few years, because they were doing the right things from the beginning. Yeah. It's those people who, and we've had it in the loan world where, I've worked at Quicken in Loan Depot in their call center for the first 12 years of my career. There's many times people call in and say, hey, I need a loan. Great. Boom, boom, boom. 30 minutes later, we're sending out documents and they're e-signing them. It's coming back. And we're like, boom, in an hour, we've already, basically closed the deal, because we were doing one time doing a lot of refinances too. And so, the refinance is something you can do in 30, 40 minutes. Take the information. Yep, you're approved. Send me your documents. I'm sending these things to sign. And now we're in process. And, but with some of those, we don't talk enough about the others where we had to go in and clean their toilets. We had, know what I'm saying, to get the house presentable, because, either the people weren't able to do it, unwilling to do it, but you were earning that sale.
Right. Well, and that's just building the relationship. And I think there's a lot of successful agents who build the relationship because they continue to cultivate, and then they have those repeat loyal fans, right? Raving fans.
Exactly.
I think that, for us, one of our biggest points is, and I think I touched on this a few minutes ago, is we really do, it's our rule, is friends and institutions. And friends and past clients, they know the expertise and the experience. We have that track record of success. And then with institutions, it's a different type of relationship, and it's a different type of trust, because, we have a local builder that we've partnered with for I think 7 or 8 years now. And, we've helped them launch over almost a dozen developments. And what that looks like is, I can look at a home and go, okay, how am I going to market this home in this community and get it sold? When you're working with institutions or builders, you still need to have that close relationship, but it's really based on trust. Because we're trying to not just manage how are we going to sell this whole community out, but how are we going to manage sales and keep sales going, so those builders don't have a huge overhead of their credit lines. So it's a higher, different level of trust. But I love that I have that and we have that, because that trickles down into, I can work with this builder and I can help, deploy an entire development of 91 units or 100 units, but then I can also help you sell your home in Jacksonville Beach, and the knowledge that I take from that, I can help implement.
Yeah, well, your diversity. So I'm looking on your social media, that new development that looks like you've made some recent sales in on there. Is that a condo? What, a townhouse is? What do you?
It's a townhouse.
Okay.
So it's a development group, Corner Lot Development and JWB, and Breeze Homes is the builder that's doing it. And so we have launched, like I said, over a dozen subdivisions and developments for the builder, and this one is just particularly special. It's in La Villa. It's a 91 unit townhome community. It's the first of its kind, fee simple in over 20 years. So it's just getting a lot of buzz. It's just exciting to be able to have residents purchase in downtown Jacksonville.
When you're in a group, because you can expand into the working with the former property bearer, and you can explain so everyone understands your diverse experience. Were you in a pre-planning stage with them, understanding, like helping them what these units could sell for and so forth?
Absolutely, yeah. So when you are running comps, you're not just looking at, okay, this is what we can sell it for. You have to figure out, you have to be able to gauge how quickly inventory can be built based on the builder's timeline. So we of course looked at numbers and said, okay, based on what's in the surrounding areas, here's where we think we can start, and here's where we think we can land based on the timeline of the development. This one is going to go till the end of 2025. So, none of us have a crystal ball, but we have to be able to keep up with market stats and market inventory to try and figure out how we can get each building sold, tier it out for them. So again, they don't have a huge overhead of credit lines.
Well, in this particular project too, obviously was planned before interest rates went up.
Right.
So adjusting for that, having worked for a large builder not that long ago, the cost of materials and so forth changed.
Yeah.
How did those conversations go? I imagine you guys had to regroup in one way, shape, or form and say, hey, these are costing us this.
Yeah.
How can we be more efficient, yet still get buyers in there before we price them out?
So one of the first conversations, it was, I think 2 or 3 years ago, was about this development. And the numbers looked totally different a few years ago. And I remember one of our first conversations, it was like, I think we're going to start it around this price. Well, then 2 years goes by, and we all know it can happen. We saw what happened with COVID. We saw what happened with cost of lumber, right? And so we just are able to, our goal and our strategy with helping any builder is to stay ahead of the market. So we would never want them to say, okay, we're going to price it at this. They have everything priced out, and then all of a sudden there's a huge inflation. We try to stay ahead of it, price it accurately, price it aggressively to really set the tone of what we think the whole development can sell for. Right. I remember during COVID, one of the things that happened is it was actually kind of a beautiful, I would say, mistake. We had a digital transformation because of COVID. We were able to create an entire virtual experience with our builder. Site agents couldn't be on site. I mean, you remember everything changed, right? So with that, we created this digital transformation where it was a one-stop shop, how you submitted offers, how you saw the property. With that being said, we were doing a lot of pre-sales during that time. But what happened is, in a lot of builders, they got caught with, not caught, that's the wrong word, but in a position where they were under contract for a certain amount, and then all of a sudden lumber went up 300%. So then we had to go back to the consumer and say, hey, so sorry, but your contract is actually up $57,000. One of the things I love about the builder that we partner with is they were like, we don't want to be in that position anymore. So, we're not going to really do the pre-sales. It's more of, we're going to release a building, and then we know the price. We're looking at, they're looking at the bottom line number. Now we know where we can land.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the builder I was working, they had to actually go to the spec homes because it's a bad consumer experience.
Yeah.
And even though it's reality of life and they have no control over the cost of that lumber.
Yeah.
The consumer doesn't care. Well, they got a contract for that price. They don't understand really what's all going in
Right.
to that and trying to, it's like, predicting the interest rates and so forth. They're trying to predict months and months in advance, if
Sure.
not further, of what money's going to cost
Mhm.
and balancing that out. So the question that was coming to my mind there, with this diverse experience, because the average agent is not in these conversations that you're having and working these out. How has that experience helped you with confidence, explaining to just your average residential single family home buyer, in whether it's doing a listing presentation or a buyer consultation?
I think that, and again, in the 10 years I've been doing this, I feel like it's been 20 or 30 because I have worn so many different hats, and I've been thrown in so many different situations, which I'm so thankful for because it's allowed me to really feel, have conviction behind the conversations that I'm having. So,
Right.
I can going to one of my builder meetings and talking about, we're going to launch this next development. What are we looking to do? What's the pricing? It keeps me completely honed in on what's happening just in the builder community within Northeast Florida. So when I'm coming back and talking to maybe, a traditional buyer who wants to buy new construction from another builder, I know I have my thumb on the pulse, right? So I understand a little bit more about what that looks like from the developmental side. And then just from a financial conversation, the negotiations that we're doing and the incentives that are constantly, going up and down. It opens your eyes more to a creative negotiation art versus just let's offer this. I mean, it's really a numbers game. And at the end of the day, yes, we're building relationships, but people don't want a best friend, right? They want to like you and they want to be able to be in the room with you, but they're looking for real advice and they are looking for you to almost guide them. And some of the toughest, when they're making a decision, there's been so many times where like, what would you do? And I have to have conviction behind what I'm saying.
Right. Right.
Because there's hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line.
Well, because my wife's an agent, so I've been listening to these conversations going on, and in the negotiations back and forth, and sometimes she'll shoot me what's going on just to get my angle on, especially if there's finances involved. Have you seen since this post-COVID, really, with interest rates where they're at, but maybe the last 12 months, I know every loan right now has extra puzzle pieces to it. I believe from what I'm seeing is every purchase or sale has extra puzzle pieces to it. Everyone has the sellers, they're building a home, but it's not quite ready, but they need to sell this home before that's ready and close on that other one. And so it's, the builders are never on time, so that you need to do a rent back or, there's all these moving pieces going on, and it's involved in a negotiation. And like I said, that creativity, and how do you sell not only your customers in the negotiation that, hey, this is the way I would go, because you have to also, when you're presenting it to the other agent, saying, hey, this is what we need because, and having that knowledge and be able to, explain it out, to give them ammunition for them to sell it versus just saying, hey, we need this. Go figure it out.
Right. I think that I've dealt with a lot of agents that are like that on the other end. And I think at the end of the day, we are here to work together. Well, first off, we're a transaction broker, right? So I think at the end of the day, it's how can we make this deal work? How can we get it together? One of my first conversations with an agent on either side is always, hey, I want to be fully transparent and open. Let's see if we can make this work. So I'm going to ask, one or two questions right off the bat. And if it's like, no, then let's just move on from it. But it's not negotiating just to negotiate. I've met those agents too, where it's like, come on, you're just trying to wheel and deal $1,000. It's how can we make this a win-win for the buyer and the seller, right? How do we make it where the seller walks away with, wow, I feel really great about this. I don't feel like I feel like I'm walking away with the equity that I want, right? And then how does the buyer get into that situation not having buyer's remorse the next day.
Right.
And I think that as a consultant, when you're talking to someone about their real estate goals, you know right away if someone's comfortable with doing an escalation clause, an appraisal gap, or if a seller is willing to do a post-occupancy. So right off the bat, I think that if you don't know the creative tools to use as an agent, you're just doing your customer a disservice. So, escalation clauses, appraisal gaps, post-occupancy, as is, repair requests, those all seem like very common, but if you don't understand how to navigate them, you can get yourself in a little bit of trouble.
Explain the navigation in from your side, because I always assume a lot of the agents that are listening are, trying to, they're hearing what you're saying. They might be brand new and really taking a lot in. Some are just going to find one thing in here that they're going to take that you said and whatever and implement in their business. Listers last, right? That's that's really obviously we're getting a little more inventory right now. Listings are out there. Having that, when you go in to have that discussion with that seller about their home, preparing them, knowing that, based on your evaluation of the home, what you see, maybe you did a pre-listing inspection, so maybe you kind of know, oh, hey, when the hot water heater needs to be replaced or whatever, but preparing them for that negotiation, that wherever it takes us, so that when that ping pong match is over, they do feel like, hey, yeah, I know we dropped the price a little bit, but I still feel great. How do you prep them for that expectation to hopefully have that feeling?
I think any conversation you're having with a seller or a buyer, but we'll start with the seller, is you go in and you absolutely want to do a pre-listing inspection, or not. You don't have to buy an inspection, but you have to be able to know exactly the age and the functionality of every major system. You have to have those big reality checks of, hey, I know that you have X, Y, and Z, but your roof is 2006. So you're already setting those expectations, and then going into, this is what buyers can bring us. So if we list your house for $600,000, these are probably the options that we're probably going to get. And I've gotten to a point where even before we list it, I can hone in on where I believe the market is based on the data, right? Days on market, recently sold, and active. So what the competition is, and I give them 3 scenarios before we even go live. Of, here's a scenario 1 at list price with a possible credit of this because your roof is 20 years old. So let's go ahead and throw in this credit. I give them 3 solutions right off the bat. So, and just say, hey, these are possible scenarios that we might see. So when they maybe get one of those scenarios, they don't feel blindsided.
You almost put yourself in the buyer's shoes.
Well, it's more of putting myself in the shoes of, because of how many contracts I've seen and how many houses I've seen sold on either end, I know what's probably going to happen before it comes. And it's not the crystal ball effect. I wish I had that. It's more of just being really proactive about almost talking about what's our worst case scenario.
Right.
And then reeling it in.
Well, I was just thinking, if you were representing the buyer and knowing what you know as the listing agent, hey, the hot water heater's old, the roof is 2006. This is how I would come in and start this negotiation.
I flip it a little bit and say, I always want the seller or the buyer to put themselves in the other person's shoes. So it's not really me per se. It's like, hey, think about if you were a first-time home buyer. And a lot of the sellers that I do work with, I sold them their home. So I say, hey, Joe, remember when we bought this home 4 years ago and we did X, Y, and Z? It's just a reality check of, hey, what's our end goal? I'm going to try to get you the most amount of money, but it has to be realistic. So what's our end goal?
Right. Well, because you've already, the trust, the like, and the credibility is there to have those conversations with them,
Mm-hmm.
and to be real with them. I think you would agree. A lot of if they get the listing, they go, oh great, all right, I'll put the sign in
Yeah.
tomorrow. I've heard stories where they're already ordering pictures, and the agent hadn't even walked by in the house, and the house is a mess.
Yeah.
And now you're ordering pictures to come over. What
No.
slow down a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's again with this NAR settlement.
Mhm.
I think that it's going to cause a lot of chaos, but I think it's going to be great for the agents who are actually treating this as a consulting gig and really honing in on how to help.
When you say
people.
chaos,
Mhm.
do you mean more of a mental chaos?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be people running around screaming. I think it's I think it's the chaos of one agents who have been doing this maybe since COVID and
Mhm.
things are getting a little harder. They're probably sweating a little bit because they're thinking, how am I going to provide for my family? Or well, I'm used to doing X amount of deals and I'm used to collecting this check. If they don't understand how to navigate that with a buyer broker agreement or navigate that with explaining it to sellers, we're probably going to see a lot of those agents leave.
Mhm.
And I think that's the chaos. And I think on the seller side, the chaos is them maybe not understanding fully what's actually happening. And if they don't have the right agent or consultant in front of them that can explain it to them, it's not going to make them feel very great. And I think, again, as long as we are just open and transparent and we say, hey, the commission, it's always been this way. It can be negotiable. We're going to do a buyer broker agreement. I think as long as we set the right expectations, everything's going to be fine.
So I imagine you're getting internal memos in Keller.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of tone, what kind of mindset are they trying to keep everyone in right now? Because I imagine it's already starting to come out as obviously some trainings, but they're going to really make a focus on creating this presentation and being more, however, role playing in this for some of these agents. Some it's going to come easy for, some are going to have to work at it.
Well, I mean, honestly, one of the things that we've always done, my partner and I with our team and with Keller Williams, we've always done buyer broker agreements. So it's nothing new to us. Again, we've always treated this like a business. We've treated ourselves like consultants. So anytime I work with a buyer that's a friend or whatever that looks like, we're doing a full consultation and we're saying, these are the reasons why you need an agent. These are the reasons why I'm here for you. This is a handshake on paper saying, I'm your guy, I'm your person, and I'm going to be here to help you. If you don't have that buyer broker agreement, I've seen it 1,000 times where an agent shows a buyer 25 houses and then they're out of town that weekend and the buyer goes to an open house and goes under contract because the buyer didn't really understand. And again, it can go either way. It's the agent's fault for not really explaining it. And it's also, not having something signed. If you're not treating yourself like a professional, why is someone else going to treat you like a professional?
For the consumers that might be listening, or maybe we cut a reel out of this, how should, in your way, how do you introduce that you're going to get them to sign this buyer broker agreement? What is kind of the steps that you lead in your presentation, consultation process that leads you to getting that signed?
So I think I treat it like a profession, and when I'm talking to any agent and I'm trying to help them or coach them, it's if you called an attorney, right, you would set up a meeting and you would go to that attorney's office, right, and they would go over the plan of action, right? That's the same as real estate agents. We are consultants, so we're going to set up an appointment. We're going to talk. We're going to consult on what your buyer needs are, and then we're going to go over what this looks like from day one of setting up listings to how I'm going to get you under contract. You have to set the expectation and outline, hey, I want to be able to show you what
don't assume they
is.
know what
Right.
you're going to be doing.
Don't assume that they know. Assume, even if they're not a first-time home buyer, even if they bought a home 10 years ago, so much has changed. So they want a professional, they want a consultant, so they want to be able to know exactly what are they in for, right? And then you tell them, this is what we're seeing. If there's a house that doesn't have, if there's a for sale by owner, let's say on Zillow, and you're interested in it and it doesn't say that there's a co-op, let me worry about that. That's not your job. That's why I'm here. Don't worry about that. I'm going to handle that with the agent and with the seller. And I think that it's just having conviction behind it. Something that I wanted to touch base on and talking about the builders and the institutions is, we were talking about chaos a little bit. I truly believe that this is a kind of a door opening more for builders and institutions, because sellers don't really know which way they want to go, and they don't know possibly if they want to offer those co-ops and things like that. While we're trying to figure everything out, I think this is a great time for those builders to keep offering those amazing incentives, right? Because like I said before, any sales industry that has an incentive for that product, you're going to get more people in the door. So it's just, I think, a great time for builders to keep throwing out those incentives and those co-ops, because it's going to show that the buyer and the consumer that the agent is still valued.
Well, let's flip it over, since you brought up those incentives. You got a listing on obviously an existing home. How are you strategizing with the lister or with the seller in to compete with a lot of new construction? Because wouldn't you say the new construction is your primary competitor?
Well, and right now, the number one question I still get asked every day is, what are interest rates? One of the main incentives years ago was always just closing costs. So that was one of the number one bullet points I would talk with the seller is, we can list your house for, $600,000. Here's some scenarios that might come into play. The buyer may ask for 3% closing cost, right? So that was one of the scenarios I was talking about. Now it's, hey, to make sure we're competing with these builders who are buying down the rate, we need to throw in, if you're comfortable with it, it doesn't have to be closing costs. Let's throw in, $10,000 towards a rate buy down. And so that's become the new normal.
So you're trying to get them to do it up front versus 2 weeks on the out there. Oh, we need to drop price.
I think it definitely depends on the situation.
Right.
But again, every scenario, it's, hey, if we come to a place where you are wanting to, reduce the price, do a price improvement, we just have to figure out what different incentives are. But the rate buy down is the number one incentive. But I think it just depends on the situation. If a seller needs to move in 45 days, because they got a job transfer, then I think we're going to throw in a little bit more bells and whistles.
Right.
But again, it's just setting expectation, and the rate buy down is the number one competition right now with builders.
If you were to make a broad assumption over the greater real estate agents that are out there, is it having these conversations like we're talking, like sitting down, like, hey, here's, because you've gestured several times that you've gone to your buyer or seller and say, hey, this could happen, this can happen, this can happen, A, B, or C. That these conversations aren't going on enough,
right,
with the agents in their and who they're representing.
I would agree with that, and I think what happens is, and again, it's hard because there's that fine line where we are very listing heavy, so we see a lot of agents on the other end who we have an amazing transaction coordinator, Leslie. She's been with us for almost 5 years, and these agents are asking her for advice. Questions that they should be going to their broker for.
Right.
And it happens all the time. People, it's kind of mind-blowing, and it's scary to think that these individuals have someone's finances essentially in their hands. But I think that setting expectations, having the conversations, I think a lot of agents, for some reason, they get the listing, they get really excited, and then they just, want to be the person's best friend, and they want to talk about, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a reel, I'm going to, take photos, but they're not having those financial conversations up front.
The stuff that can really throw it off the tracks.
The stuff that can really throw it off the tracks. And like I said, I like going over worst case scenario just to show them, hey, this could happen, but I'm going to do everything possible to not let that happen. Right. Like I can be the nicest person in the room, but I can also be a complete bulldog when it comes to getting you what you need and you want. And that's what they want at the end of the day.
Right.
They want to walk away feeling like they have the money in the bank that they want, that you earned every penny. And I think that's one of the biggest kind of issues that we have. And with all of this is, unfortunately, consumer doesn't feel like the agent is worth the money. And that's what's happened. And that's because, take Zillow, for instance. Like I said earlier, a lot of agents just buy leads right off the bat. And if the consumer keeps getting paired up or matched up with an agent that really doesn't know what's going on with that listing, over time, they keep having bad experience after bad experience. They're not going to have trust in those agents.
I want to step back on just to give some advice out for new agents, because I think you would agree with this. And I think they need to hear it from top producers all the time, because I haven't met a top producer who said, no, I wouldn't spend any time with that. But for these agents that you were just gesturing that are asking your transaction coordinator for advice, they need to search out someone early as more a mentor. I mean, you'd like to think it's the broker, but some of these, Keller Williams is a big organization. It's not a little boutique brokerage with 15, 20 agents. You're talking hundreds of agents in any one office. Yeah. And to search out that person you can go have lunch with, you can go get a coffee with, type of thing, a top producer that has transactions closed and has been doing a little bit of while, that they can become friends and converse with and ask a question that they may be embarrassed to ask their broker, though they shouldn't be. Yeah. The broker doesn't expect you to know everything. They know that. They've been doing the business hopefully long enough. Yeah. But to have that conversation of how I should handle this, especially right now with these negotiations,
everyone
to role play with somebody to say, hey, this is what we're going to come back with. What do you think their response might be to prepare? Because I think another thing that's probably lacking is they should be playing this like chess, and they should know what their next three moves are and what the counter moves are going to be.
I think, again, going to the right brokerage, because the brokerage has to have training, and in any industry that you're in, you have some sort of guide, or, you shadow or training, whatever that looks like. Because the real estate license, because you can obtain that pretty quickly, you have to really find the right brokerage that is going to set you up for success. Right. I can't hone on that enough. And then in addition to training at your brokerage, you really should find someone that can mentor you. And again, you don't want to, call this person 5 times a day, because they're working as well. It's either finding a team or finding someone that you can just, go to have those questions answered.
When you were doing your initial, you said you talked to several brokerages before choosing Keller Williams. Did you talk to any of the agents at that time? Or just more or less the broker or the recruiter?
To pick their brains?
Well, how is it? Is everyone's going to tell me they went to their brokerage. I've heard 180 something of them, because of education and technology. So we know that's not really what it is. Or at least they maybe talked a good game about the education, or they talked a good game about the technology.
It's a first date. It's a first date. Yeah. So every brokerage that I went to, and you name them all, I went to all of them. 10 years ago, half of them didn't exist, to be honest. But I went to all the big ones, and it was like a first date. Everyone's dressed nice. Everyone's telling you what you want to hear. It's courting. Right. And I think at the end of the day, I had to choose, because I personally I wanted to get the warm and fuzzies. A lot of the brokerages checked off all the same boxes, and there was 3 that checked off education and things like that. But I loved the culture and just the relationship in general. And, I had spoken to multiple agents that were at that brokerage at one point in time. And so that's really what sealed it for me. So
you talked to agents. That was the key, because like you said, the brokers are going to be dressed nice, and they're going to tell you all the good things. Yeah. And agents are, the top agents to me are collaborative. They're willing to talk to you, because I think when in reality you've been in the business long enough, you sort of are competition, but your circle of people that and this person coming that you don't know, their circle is totally different.
Yeah, there's enough market share to go around.
Yeah. To share that. Change pace here a little bit. I noticed you have an Airbnb. Yeah. Is that tell us a little bit about that, and what is how's that another dimension of actual experience of running an Airbnb?
Yeah. So we bought a vacation rental in Volano during COVID. So people thought we were crazy. One of the best risks ever taken, and it's been great. It's I call it a business in a box. It was already a running machine who we bought it from. And so, but we manage it ourselves. So it's talking about like occupancy rates, what that looks like in terms of like the management. That's absolutely a part of, I would say, my portfolio. I actually have a customer right now. She's a great friend of mine, and I've sold her 2 or 3 houses, and now she wants to buy a vacation rental. So we're actually looking at one next week. And it's, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Give me all the info, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Right.
And that's where I can come in and I can set you up and go, okay, this is a great location. Based on the occupancy rate, I think we could do this. I can connect you with this property management company, and I can really run that pro forma of what it looks like. Because at the end of the day, it has to make sense for the return that they're getting.
It's a different animal, and in some areas there's an oversaturation.
Yeah.
We know, like St. Augustine Beach, you're limited.
Yeah.
You need to know that. You can't just turn any place into an Airbnb.
Right.
You have to have that knowledge. There's so many times over the years where, working with agents where they've come, oh my God, they want to buy an investment property, and because they don't own their own investment properties. Well, not to say that they haven't dabbled in it. They think it's like some sort of different animal.
Right.
But now when Airbnb, I think I don't know, personally, I think it's the wave has gone by because some areas are oversaturated with them. People are just common houses or Airbnb, which I think more people were thinking more of the vacation rental near the beach. You can walk to the beach.
Right.
But what are some things that people need to, for one, they need to obviously call someone like yourself that's experienced. But what are some of the obvious things that they need to consider when looking, say, hey, I want to buy an Airbnb? It's not as simple as that.
Yeah, I think location is number one. A house can look great online, but it's all about the numbers. And if the numbers don't work for you, especially if you're getting a mortgage out to purchase this, you absolutely need to work with a company that can give you what those occupancy rates are. What's the average occupancy, like, is it rented out 75% of the time? Like, those numbers matter so much. And then also, what are the carrying costs? Is there an HOA? Like, what's your overhead? Is it furnished? So there's a whole pro forma that I go over with them and say, okay, here's what you can expect. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but here's what you can expect. Here's what your mortgage, insurance, taxes, everything would be. And here's what we think you can net based on what we think we can get if you rate it at this number. So there's just so much that goes into it. I think having investment properties is incredible. It's just, you have to make sure that you're buying the right one. Otherwise, it's not going to be very good.
A lot of people have asked this question before, but I think it really needs to get out there based on the current market conditions with rates where they're at and so forth. I think it was a little easier when rates were, 2 and 3%. You get an investment property, obviously you pay a little bit higher interest rate with an investment property, apples to apples versus your primary residence, but that's understood. But to have some sort of cash flow off of it, would you right now recommend, if someone's in the position, even if it was a net zero, cash flow situation, to invest?
Yeah, I think I get asked that question a lot. I think, for the last year and a half, I think buyers in general they kind of stopped buying because they wanted the interest rates to go down. And I think we've seen that, you just need to buy whatever it is. There's different types of loans that you can do, which as an investor. And I think that if you have the money to do it, like, just take the risk, do it, make sure the numbers work. But I'm all about, if it's the right one and you can make it work and you can make the mortgage payment and we can make sure that you're even just breaking even or whatever that looks like, I say absolutely do it. Yeah.
Because over time, the equity's there. We know that they're going to build equity in it. And then, the rates do drop. You refinance it, restructure it in any way, shape, or form.
I would hate to advise anyone on just don't buy right now. And it's I always joke around that I convince people not to sell their house all the time because if it doesn't make sense for you, it doesn't make sense. That's that commission breath. I don't have commission breath because I want it to make sense for you. But I would never advise someone, just don't do anything with real estate right now because of the market could change tomorrow.
Right.
We have no idea.
But back to the Airbnb, you self-manage it. I think people underestimate going in and cleaning and all those little things that you need to do when people moving out.
Yeah.
The weekenders, the 1 or 2 nighters, I mean, you could be cleaning that place multiple times a week versus, obviously, I know with our units, we're able to really, my wife focus on getting those people in there for months at a time.
Yeah, we block it out where we think we have the minimum of 3 nights. On slow months, we will bring it down to 1 night. Because the wear and tear itself is also another part of it to think about. But no, it's a well-oiled machine. We have a cleaning team that
you gotta have a cleaning. It's important. It's hard to find those.
Yeah, I mean, in our vacation rental, it's 35 minutes away, so it's a well-oiled machine. And that's the thing is, if you want to self-manage, you absolutely can. But if you want to hire a property management company, they're out there too. So I think it just depends on kind of what you want to do. We self-manage, but we have the team that comes in and does everything.
All right. Well, I actually had the Women for Women Jacks on here. Tell us about that.
Okay. So Women for Women Jacks is an incredible connecting group. We don't like to use the word networking. We like to say connecting because I know you've probably been to a million different networking events, and essentially it's a happy hour and everyone just hands out business cards. But you don't feel like you walked away with a connection. And so I joined, it'll be almost 2 years, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was a great group of women. It's all different types of different industries, a lot of entrepreneurs. We have a lot of financial advisors. We have health industry. It's just everything you could think of. Became a part of the board with my event planning background. I wanted to dabble in that. So, yeah, I'm a part of this group, and it's a great group of women. We meet once a month, and we like to focus on local business owners. And it's funny, we've had a few men say, why can't we join? And I'm like, well, it kind of defeats the purpose, but
they're because you can join the council. What's the one at the Realtor or Women's Council, right?
Yeah.
Men can actually join that.
Right. Yeah, I have a few colleagues that are in that. But no, it's more of just local business owners trying to figure out, what we want to focus on that month. It's always diverse. So this month, it's tomorrow actually. It's going to be, we're focusing on finances, and then something to do with, we like to do either emotional, health, holistic, whatever it is. So we always try to stick with something that has to do with like your business. We did a panel, which I was on, where I talked about investing and flipping houses and things like that. So we always like to have like a financial component of it, and then maybe go holistic or do, we had Billions in Bourbon, where we did like a bourbon tasting, and then we talked about financial planning. So
you more or less kind of like have a lunch and a guest speaker or a panel.
At night, yeah.
It's
a monthly event, and we have, food and drinks, and sometimes we'll have a panel, and sometimes we'll always have a speaker or a panel, and then we do some sort of like task afterwards. So it's really fun.
All right. So the last part I have on here, and because I think it's so important, because everyone does it differently in real estate. We'll try to finish up with this. There's prospecting and marketing, from what I'm told.
Yeah.
What is your, over 10 years, you've probably evolved. Like I said, initially you went in, you were doing the prospecting calls 9 to 11 type of thing. What has your marketing campaign look like today, or your prospecting campaign? What are the foundational things that are just going on? You have maybe set on auto drive and they're doing, but what does Carrie do for staying top of mind in front of her? As you mentioned, a lot of your clients are friends or these institutions. You want to say it's top of mind on them. What are you doing there? What does Carrie's marketing look like?
So it's so interesting, because I feel like everyone does it either exactly the same or totally different. I think I mentioned this when we first started talking, but we've done the whole loud thing at one point. We were, a very loud, large team, a lot of like drip campaigns and just videos and things like that. And over the years, we've really honed in on the quality of who we work with and what we're trying to convey. If it's through social media, if it's through email, things like that. Of course, we do the standard, newsletter, because we want to stay on top of mind to our database. We do a lot of YouTube videos, but really it's just my social media that I sprinkle in here and there. But it's the YouTube videos, doing market analysis, and we do our newsletters. But other than that, it's really just more organic, and it's just the relationships with the builders that
Well,
we
you have these regular things. You say your newsletter, whether it's going out monthly or whatever. Your CRM is pumping something out.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Multiple times a month.
Yeah.
And then your CRM, which is gotten you, like you said, when you've reached a point, you've created enough credibility, created enough friends that trust you, and now you're just reminding them, because obviously everyone's not selling a house every month or year.
Right.
I mean, it comes around, but hopefully you're staying out there, that if they're at a barbecue this weekend and someone says they're looking to buy or sell a home, they remember that Carrie's the one that they need to go to.
Yeah, it really is. It's over the years, it has become more organic. I'm not passing out business cards everywhere I go. It's just real estate is always a topic anywhere you go.
Yeah.
And it's just, it can be a very organic conversation of, Carrie, how's the market doing? And I've gotten to a point where I don't even bring it up anymore. It gets brought up to me. And I think that just is probably years of experience and doing what I've done. And, of course, doing the social media stories and of the experiences that I have and the happy moments and sometimes the good and the bad and the ugly with flips that we have and squatters and stuff like that. But it's letting people know that, hey, I'm here to advise, without shoving it down their throat.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, you enter a social situation, you go over someone in the neighborhood and there's 20 other couples there.
Yeah.
You're putting out on your social media, your real estate, what you're doing and that sort of thing. The common thing to break ice in a conversation to someone who you're not talking to every day is to say, hey, what's going on what's going on in real estate?
Yeah.
Then boom, the conversation
think being
starts.
a resource for people too. Like the other day I had a friend text me, past client and friend, and they they needed help with an attorney. And it's just being a resource. I want to be that person for you, whatever it is. I want to be able to connect you with anyone that you need. If it's a financial advisor, if it's a CPA, if it's a lawn company, if it's whatever that looks like, I want to be able to connect you, because if you're adding value to someone, they're going to see it. And I think that's really the key, is that you have to be a resource for people. You have to show your value, and it's not, don't have commission breath. Don't drool at the mouth when someone says they want to buy or sell a house. Just have a conversation with them and say, hey, I'd love to chat with you and see if I can help you.
I think, you bring up a point, and it's been brought up before, but I don't know if I triggered this thought at the time, but real estate agents are an important part of the general community. Going back to the NAR lawsuit, they're sitting there trying to attack agents and saying you get paid too much. Great agents are an asset to the many businesses. Right. We know that building houses is a huge part of our GDP because there's so many people involved, from building all the different pieces, washer, dryer, whatever, and obviously holding a community together. When people own homes, they generally want to protect the area that they're around, right? And keeping, but how real estate agents are that resource. And I don't think that's actually put out there enough on how much. Now, I know that. Right. The appraisers know that. The home inspectors know that, because you're referring business to them. But I think there's a lot of people out in the peripheral that don't know that, and I think we need to be better.
Yeah.
And that's either with Florida Realtor or NAR or NEFAR. They need to actually get on campaigns to get out there and promote just that.
Well, and I think it's because of the shows like the $1 Million Listing and HGTV and all that. It shows, I think, an unrealistic story of what real estate is, and it's just not that at all. So,
right.
I mean, there's the fun part of it, and yes, I've sold some beautiful $1 million homes, but was that an easy deal to do? No. Yeah. So
some of the flipping ones are good, because when they tear open the wall and there's a bunch of termites or roaches or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's good entertainment.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's advising and consulting and just being that trusting professional for your customer is the key.
I was trying to I got to remuster my last go-to question.
Okay.
Well, I want you, if you can express here in 30, 60 seconds or whatever, whether it's an agent out there that may be listening to this and say, geez, I resonate with Carrie. She sounds like a cool person. Maybe I need to pick her brain, or how, really just, I mean, how important is it for agents to get out and actually interact with each other. I think so many have gone to, like a lot of workers have gone, they've gone home and they're interacting with their families or maybe their neighbors or that sort of thing, people in their circle, maybe their kid's sporting event, but they actually really need to go out and interact with other agents and talk some of the, what do you call it? The water cooler talk, you know, how are you handling the NAR lawsuit? You know, that kind of conversations. How do you think that's important?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Truth. I think that if you are looking to have purposeful conversations, you know, at a networking event with a bunch of realtors that have maybe only been in the industry for 6 months, I don't know if that's your time best spent, right?
Right. Those 6-monthers need to be using the 2 ears versus,
Right. So what I mean by that is, hey, and if you've been in the industry for only 6 months, like, good for you. Definitely get a coach or go to a brokerage where you get training. But what I mean is, you should be going to masterminds. And masterminds, I think, are an incredible tool for agents that are like-minded, goal-oriented, values-aligned, and can bounce ideas off of each other and say, hey, what's going on? Versus I've seen it where there's just a lot of events where they're just at a happy hour and they're not really having purposeful conversations. So yes, you should be talking to other people that are in the industry, but be careful and make sure that who you're actually listening to and talking to, because that really does matter. Like you said, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right.
So who are you talking to? Who are you going to happy hours with? I think there's definitely a collaboration that can happen, but you need to make sure that your goals align.
Where can they find these masterminds?
I mean, they're all over. I mean,
Are
Keller
you talking
Williams,
the national one?
Well, Keller Williams has masterminds within our brokerage based on like different tier levels. So if you are, you know, hit this much in volume, but there's masterminds all over. I mean, there's the really good ones. They can cost a pretty penny, but you know, you're sitting in a room with people who are. It's much bigger than just you and being a part of something that's bigger than you. But in terms of if you're local here in Jacksonville, I would start with your brokerage and say, hey, do we have any masterminds going on? Because there might be a colleague that sits next to you that has the same volume as you, that might be going through the same thing as you, and you are a lot more like-minded than you think. I think kind of start there.
Yeah.
And then, but make sure it's the right room.
No, that's so. And I was just thinking like how it would function, but there's lots of books on how to run a mastermind, or how to get it going. Because once it gets going, it rolls. It's just getting it going. But I think that statement you just made was obviously not only obvious, but brilliant. Many people don't think about that. They're just like, oh, let's get a mastermind. Let's get a bunch of people together. But a lot of times, especially you get a bunch of agents that are less than a year together in a room.
They're just all sitting around having a cocktail. It's time is money. And for me, just being in the industry for 10 years, you know, having a family, like being away and time, I have to be really purposeful with who I spend my time with. And so I think anyone in this industry should always think that as well, as, you know, if you're spending an hour or 2 hours with these people, are they the right people to be in the room? Just a good rule of thumb.
And even, I mean, I'm just thinking, you said the expense. I know the guy who coached me on podcast, I knew nothing about podcasting. He spent tens of thousands of dollars going to places like Puerto Rico to be around, you know, paying $10,000-$20,000 to join. I mean, not saying you need to do that, but if someone is asking for a few dollars for their time and they have the credibility and this is someone, it's worth to go and taste it.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, like you said, are we overpaid? Well, are our agents overpaid? If they're utilizing and using some of that money to continue their education,
right?
You know, if they're trying to do everything, I think obviously you and I know they get that 1099 for $10,000 and they've spent $10,001, you know, on whatever they're doing, and not actually
buy a new car.
Go buy a new car. They're not, you know, putting some money aside for education and so forth.
How like health insurance, 401ks. I mean, most realtors only make $56,000 a year, and that's, I mean, not a lot. I'm saying not a lot of agents even make that much, and there's no health insurance, there's no 401k. So, you know, these consumers see these big checks, but it just depends on what the agent is doing. Yeah.
I trust what I've been talking about in the last few podcasts, because in my little gift bag there's a nice journal for you.
Thank you.
Is to start actually writing down each day. Spoke to this client for 30 minutes about whatever. Because how many times at 8 o'clock at night, and I've seen this numerous times in my household, you're having a conversation. It's an 8 o'clock conversation because you know your client's on the edge.
Right.
You want them to be able to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
So they're calling you and spilling everything into you. And a lot of it's like, there's nothing you're going to do tonight. You could have this conversation 8 o'clock in the morning, but you're having it 8 o'clock at night, so at least they can sleep.
Right.
Because it is stressing them out. Whatever.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, overwhelming to them. But we're not charting that. We're not putting that in our, this is things that agents deal with.
Right.
And I think agents should journalize and show, just like an attorney does. Every time you call the attorney, and of course they're rounding it up either to the half hour to the hour.
Yeah, they write everything down.
Yeah, and you're writing everything, every conversation, and they're rounding their time. And because one of the conversations is, should agents charge by the hour? Right. Yeah. I don't think I don't think people want to see that.
No, because there's a lot of conversations that are had that are, sometimes at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. And again, over the 10 years, I've definitely tried to set the tone of, hey, like, you teach people how to treat you. So if someone calls you at 10 o'clock at night and you answer, you're teaching them that they can do that.
Right.
So I always tell my customers, hey, I will answer the phone. If we have a closing the next day or what, but if not, like, we'll talk the next morning, and they completely understand.
They have to text you 911.
Yeah.
Let you know, like, oh my God, this is the end of the world. You need to call me back.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. And a lot of top agents, you guys do it, I'm sure, a little differently, how you present it, because your personalities. But you find out over time, and to have 57 transactions, in 12 months, that's a lot. I mean, I think, Carrie Carpenter, she had 10 transactions going on at the same time last year. I mean, oh my God. I mean, bouncing all over the place. Yeah, 100%. Anything you want to add?
No.
Did we not talk about?
No, I think we hit everything.
Yeah,
so
we did go down. We hit
for
NAR.
having me.
We talked about the property bear and working with the institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the key things we want to do. So
yeah. No, this has been great. Appreciate you, and I know we've been talking for quite some time, so it's nice to finally connect.
Well, it is always. I always have the open door. Something's out there to everyone. I haven't done one here recently where we're doing it at the beginning of the year, what I call mortgage updates, where I don't do it. I don't send it out to Apple Podcast, but where we just stream live and talk about a subject. Because we have a lot of different things going on in there, insurance, this NAR lawsuit, whatever it is, that, just word that you want other agents to, or even just your